All right, we're sliding for home on Psalm 63. I talked about verse, 9 and 10, where he said, "Those plotting to destroy me will come to ruin. They will go down into the depths of the earth. They will die by the sword and become the food of jackals." David was a master of uh, harsh visual images. He had really, for his enemies, his desire was their destruction. There's no way to put a new coat of paint on that fence. That's the way it is. And let's be honest, that was cultural. You think about the world in David's day, it was about conquest and defending. Those were the two, for most people. Unlike today, although it feels this way sometimes to us today, but it is not this way for us. In David's day, in terms of a king, it was all about conquest and defense. It was primarily, there was some diplomacy involved. David was a pretty good diplomat. A lot of times the diplomacy involved some kind of in-kind goods payments, like horses, chariots, money, although there was no such thing as money. So precious metals, precious stones. There was also, and David's son Solomon seemed to be pretty much the master of this, which that's not the right word, because it was actually his downfall. But his primary means of diplomacy was through marriage of various daughters of various other rulers. Well, we, on so many levels, we can't relate and connect. But do the best you can and put yourself in that time frame and realize that it was very much for David, kill or be killed. And his preference was to not be killed. Well, verse 11, "But the king will rejoice in God." And I talked about that. We so often rejoice because of what God does for us. And that's right. We're supposed to do that. But as we grow mature, we come to rejoice not only in the gift, but in the giver. Isn't that a mark of maturity? Isn't it a very strong defining mark of mature people that they are grateful for what they receive from another, but their gratitude goes beyond just whatever they received and goes all the way back to the individual from whom they received it. Your kids are pretty likely to, if you raise them well, they're gonna be grateful for what you give them. That they have to be trained for that. But a step beyond that is them being grateful not just to you, but for you. David says, "I will rejoice in God." I want to, pardon me, I want to spend our time today thinking out loud about what does it look like to rejoice in God? It ought to be easy because we know what rejoice means. To rejoice means to re-experience, or in this case, re-express joy. To rejoice in whatever culture you grew up in, whatever time you grew up in, wherever you grew up, to rejoice is essentially the same thing. Now, it may look different from culture to culture. Some cultures, well, I'll even put it this way, some families, when they rejoice, we're talking fireworks, hot dogs, we're talking decorations. Other families, when they rejoice, this is the other end of the spectrum, it's a meaningful nod. Somewhere in the middle is where most of us find ourselves. By the way, don't be the other end of the spectrum that just nods, okay? Be much closer to the ones that are throwing a party, firing off fireworks and all of that. To rejoice, as I said, and you see it instantly, it involves joy. What's the difference between joy and happiness? Oh, some people say, oh, it's a vast difference. The older I get, the less I'm on that train. There is a difference. I'm not sure it's a dramatic difference. Happiness, okay, it has to do with my circumstance, with this moment. Happiness is perhaps shallower than joy, and one of the reasons would be because it's about a happening, this moment. It is very much more momentary. If you, like, for instance, occasionally I get bored. Actually, I get bored a lot. And sometimes I'll jump on my YouTube, and there's this channel on it called Dry Bar Comedy, and it's all clean. Excuse me. I could watch this comedy with my grandkids, and it's mostly funny. When they pop a joke, I laugh. It makes me happy. But the nature of that happiness is that when that video is done and I move on to the next thing, that happiness is pretty much not there. What joy does is it stays. Now, I know this, I'm making more of this, but here's my opinion. When I have happiness, that's for the moment, right? When I'm listening to the comedian. Joy is a state of being that I carry with me, often because of the happiness and the laughter, but it's like it's like an abiding taste. Joy. Okay. How do you rejoice in God then? Come on, Steve. Quit beating around the bush. Quit circling the landing strip. All right. To rejoice in God, in my opinion, means to reflect on His nature and what He has done. That's all a part of His nature. I mean, but you don't separate them. Realize that whatever He has done is merely an expression of who He is. Sometimes what He has done is not a happy thing. Sometimes He has permitted things into your life and my life that are not happy. Let's be honest, okay? God's not Santa Claus. He's not the genie in the bottle. There are times when he does what is right, and what is right, well, it's not fun. Those times, I think, fall into two categories. One is into his execution of justice. Okay. The other is it is him deepening us toward growth. Our growth happens in those times much more than in the happy, joyful times. However, God is a good Father. He's a perfect Father. He makes no mistakes. One of the mistakes that that I would make if I were him is I would be generous at the wrong times. I would be compassionate, but in the wrong ways. He never is. He is, whatever he does is perfect. Or that's the place to start with. In God, he's perfect. So when I reflect on his nature, I'm going to see his nature in events that I experience in my life and events that I have vicariously experienced through reading or hearing from other people. It's not that hard. To rejoice in God makes him the central point. It makes him the hub of life. You can't rejoice in God without him being at the center and heart. Okay, so one of the challenges for me, and I'm going to pass it along to you as if it would apply, reflect. You can't rejoice in God without reflecting on his deeds and his nature. Okay. What has he done for you? Start with today and work your way back in your memory. And then, second question is, okay, I'm going to be very mechanical with this and tell you, it's going to be to your benefit to write these things down in like a grocery list. And you don't have to write a paragraph about everything, not even a sentence. Maybe just a couple of words is sufficient. You write that down. And then you go through that list, and beside each one of those things, you identify what about his nature is in that. Okay, just an idea. And then David says, all who swear to tell the truth will praise him, while liars will be silenced. Now the him, the antecedent to him, is not God, I don't think, but the king. Or is it? The closest antecedent is God. Let's be realistic. All who swear to tell the truth will praise him. Yes. When you reflect on God's nature, when you rejoice in him, it's going to elicit praise. And interestingly, praise and truth-telling are adhered here. I mean, they are connected deeply, fully. While liars will be silenced, this is an important principle. I don't know whether to call it a promise or not, but I will say, here's the thing. The way God's justice works, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work on my time frame or yours, but it does work. And when it works, liars are exposed and, in fact, silenced. We can go 100 ways with this. I'm going to let you do that because I'm out of time. And next time, we'll finish up on Soul Care with Stevie.